That's right. I think we got a tip of the iceberg idea what a huge bureaucratic exercise for operators and crews this is going to be. And I'm here to present my opinion to you that MRV as a regulation is totally unnecessary. The metrics used, like EOI and all the other indices, are nonsense. They don't show anything about the efficiency of a ship. But as a previous speaker said on the previous panel, if you don't have the data, you're just a person with an opinion. So I hope I'll be able to present the data to you on these opinions in my presentation. And when I say MRV is not necessary as a regulation, I mean owners and operators always measure the efficiency and the fuel consumption of the ships, and it's good to have improvements. But to report all those things to the big brother in such a necessary fashion and complicated fashion is something beyond me. So let's see. So why did we end up with this MRV regulation? And to understand today, it's better to look a little bit into the history. When IMO a few years ago was discussing the design measures for the ship, the discussion was divisive. On one hand, there were the countries that are progressed, and on the other hand, there were the developing countries who refused to go along with such regulations. They would call on the CBDR principle, common but differentiated responsibility of the Kyoto Protocol, and we would have countries like China saying, you can decide whatever you want, but the differentiated responsibility gives us the rights that the ships we build in China do not comply with EEDI. So what happened is the developed countries played a trick on China, Brazil, and the developing countries. And being mostly part of MARPOL Annex 6, they decided to make the regulation a part of Annex 6. And to do that, all you have to do is the countries who are already part of Annex 6, they have to agree to that. So Norway made a proposal when nobody expected it. We proposed to do this as part of Annex 6. All the other developed countries said we agree. And as you can understand, the developing countries were fuming. They wouldn't agree to discuss, after that trick played on them, any operational measures at IMO. 2 years were wasted discussing market-based measures, what to apply to the ships. So as part of a delaying tactic, the developing countries would say, yes, but we don't know how much the ships are burning and what's the consumption and what's the efficiency, how can we discuss market-based measures? So IMO decided to take up something that they looked as less harmful to the discussion, the MRV. Okay, let's collect information for monitoring, reporting, and verification. Now, the EU's MRV is, of course, totally unrealistic, in my opinion. The MRV at IMO is going reasonably well as something unreasonable can go, because over there the delegates seem to understand that cargo reporting doesn't really provide anything into the efficiency of your metric. Weather condition is important and complicates things. You cannot really penalize ballast voyages. So it seems to me that a lot of people understand the futility of EOI. So do we really need MRV? I already told you, of course not. Unless you have something else in mind and your target is not really to measure the fuel consumption of the ship, but you are trying to index ships in a nice way so you can later include shipping into carbon trading. So for carbon trading, emissions trading schemes, you need two things. You need an index for the ship, where the ship stands in the bottom diagram. And the bottom diagram is the average, the baseline. If you are above, you have to pay up to the carbon exchange, buy CO2 allowances. If you are below, you can make some money, you can sell, But don't be so sure, because those baselines will be dropping every few years, like the EDI baselines do. So human nature likes simple categorizations, up and down, left and right, black and white, and therefore we tend to like simple indices in this fashion. They are attractive, but all those indices, transport work and all that, unfortunately, are utopia. So some like EOI because it's simple, some like it because it serves their interests, and to make it more palatable, they use various excuses. It's not perfect, but it's the best we have. We need to account for transport work. It smooths out if you use a rolling average and so on. And when I speak about EOI, it's similar to all the other indices. Now, this is a rolling average of an EOI of a ship that's dedicated 4 years on a route Brazil to Asia. Every point on that graph is the average of the previous 365 days. Yet, it is all over the place. The broken line at the bottom is the speed of the ship. So it's the red line that's the EOI of the ship as a rolling average, as a yearly rolling average. You can see this is what I call it's all over the place. Somebody tells me what the annual EOI of that ship is. So from that data, we'll collect all the ship information in order to try to find the averages. I'm using now graphs from submissions to IMO. This is what the average would look like. This is an amusing diagram for the general cargo ships from a nebula of thousands of EOIs, which don't really mean anything, remember, at the 10,000 deadweight range. We end up, the experts tell us where the ship should be if it had 300,000 deadweight or 320,000 deadweight. So this is the kind of nonsense I'm talking about. Lies, dumb lies, and statistics, a quote popularized by Mark Twain, although it wasn't his. In statistics, we have what we call a correlation coefficient, R squared. It shows you how well the line you drew is actually representative of the data, how well it fits your data. An R squared over 0.8 is described as a good line, whereas something below 0.5 is described as having weak correlation to your data. Here we have the EOI and the deadweight of the ship of an R square of 0.1441. This beehive is another diagram. It doesn't try to get a baseline. On this one, the baseline is 0.05, practically zero. Remember, anything below 0.5 is supposed to be nonsense. This is the kind of diagrams we see. Funny enough, the title of this diagram is Correlation Between Year-to-Year Changes. I don't see any correlation in those scattered diagrams, except for the last one. And then when I look closely, it was actually a plot of distance against itself. Of course, if you plot something against yourself, yeah, you're going to get good correlation. So, conclusion, can we stop wasting time, energy, and money with irrelevant indices and measures and really try to reduce global CO2 emissions? How can we do that? We can do that if we actually move cargo from aeroplanes, from trains, from trucks to ships, instead of saying that ships in the future should reduce their transportation by 60%. Now, all the transportation sector contributes 14% to the man-made greenhouse gases. This one contributes more, the beef industry. I haven't heard anything seriously being done for that. References. Thank you.